redundancy and having spares of important things is really, really important. You know, what you should be bringing with you when you decide that you're going to have a level that you're going to come out here. Have a level of redundancy. Have a plan. You know, if nothing else, have like a spare tarpaulin. Have, spare knife, fork and spoon, a spare mug, spare means of making fire, spare food in a different part of your pack, just in case something really awful happens and you forget something, or you pack quickly in a mood to go and you forget one or two things. And it's better if you've got redundancy. You can afford to forget the one or two things. You can afford to forget a mug if you always take two. You can afford to forget a knife and fork if you always take multiples of them. You know, it's really important to have spares. You know, a few spare plasters just in case you forget your first aid kit. A spare pen and pencil. Spare tobacco if you smoke. Spare batteries and cameras and things like that if you're just in a real rush. You're always going to forget something, so make sure the really important things that will make your camping trip really disastrous if you don't have them, that you've got a spare of, like a spare knife or a spare torch. You know, just fling another one in. It doesn't cost anything, really doesn't weigh a great deal, but you will be absolutely glad that you did. If you're going to be camping in all weathers, the most important lesson that you can learn is layers. Put as many thin layers over your body as possible, and that will trap many more layers of warm air as the heat escapes your body. It will warm up the air between the layers and give you a much more comfortable thing. This is kind of how sleeping bags work. It's to slow the heat escaping from your body that your body is continually producing. So if you make sure that you've got lots of thin layers, you're going to be a lot warmer than someone with just one or two very bulky layers. So I've always got on a t-shirt, a fleece and an overjacket, and in really cold weather I'll add a shirt to that, or a thicker t-shirt. On my legs I'll generally wear ordinary combats with a pair or two of socks and a pair of good boots, and if it gets really cold I'll put long johns under my combats. So it's all about layering. And if you layer lots of thin layers, it doesn't really matter what the performance level of that stuff is. You're not going to, ideally you're not going to be climbing mountains when you're wild camping, but if you are, then you're going to have to go in for specialist stuff, because weight's going to be a factor. But if you're just wandering around in the woods and you just want to stay reasonably warm, layers are the way to go. So what have I learned? I've learned a whole bunch of stuff doing this series, and it's been real fun, really interesting to make, and I think I'm prepared to do a second series on Back of Beyond, and to help out on other people doing series on things that they're interested in. I mean, first and foremost, a shooting schedule is really important, even if it's just scribbled on the back of a piece of paper. Have an idea of what it is you're going to shoot if you're going to shoot a series like this. Have an idea of what you're going to shoot on each particular day, weather depending, and weather's another factor. You need good weather in order to shoot. You need to make absolutely sure that you're going to have enough light, so you need to pay attention to what time sunset and sunrise are. You need to sort of get motivated and plan out your shooting accordingly, and yeah, definitely it really makes a difference to have a good plan. I learned a bit about the intros, how to put together an intro, how to sort of keep people's interest. You're going to need a good sort of like indicative piece of music. You're going to need very short sections of film so people can see what the series is about. And you need an outro with all your credits and stuff, and you need that before you start the editing process. So when you're starting to put episodes together, especially for YouTube, you can just slot the stuff in and put the intros and stuff in there. Have a disclaimer. That's always a really good idea. Otherwise somebody might try and exploit what you've done, legally. If they fall over doing what you've done, then you could get into trouble theoretically. So, tell people that, it's at their own risk that if they emulate anything in this TV series or whatever. Keep everything. Have everything. Keep every single piece of footage, even if you think it's rubbish, because there might be a few frames in there somewhere that might be good. And I don't know whether anybody's actually interested, but I'm thinking about putting a blooper reel and a few outtakes and stuff, and things that didn't make it into the series. Look at the lens. This is the hardest thing to do, especially if you've got one of these little digicams, because you're always looking for the framing on your shot, you're always casting your eyes away. But try and look deep into the lens, because that you're then looking at the viewer. And learn to do that. Just get used to staring down that big black eye. Plan out the series properly. Make loads and loads of notes. Carry a pen and paper with you constantly, all the time, anywhere you're going, even if you're just going to work and back. Carry a piece of paper and a pen just so you can write down any inspirations for anything that you've got there. Always carry spare batteries, like at least 2 spare batteries, spare cards for your camera or spare tapes for your camera, more than necessary. Take what you think you're going to shoot and then double it. And editing, be prepared to sort of like learn. The hardest lesson of all is editing all this stuff together, and that's the hardest part of shooting. Shooting seems to have got like quite easy. Editing's still a lot harder, and the more you know and the more polished your project is, the harder and the bigger a job your editing's going to see. And that's it. Just go and do it. Don't sit on the couch planning out your stuff forever. Give it an afternoon's worth of thought, and then just go out and shoot and see what you come back with from your first shoot, and see what you would have taken, and then make notes, make improvements. The shooting schedule is the biggest thing. Being organised in what you're going to do. And I have found that what I'll tend to do is way overload a shooting schedule and tick off about half of it, depending on wind and weather. But always have more footage to film, always have more things to shoot. So yeah, I've learnt a lot. And if anybody's got any questions about how I did it or how I put it together, they're welcome to get in touch with me via the email address at the end of each program. But yeah, it's been fun. Oh, and another thing. When you're filming, and you're filming to be a presenter, as well as looking right into the lens, wait 3 or 4 seconds that you can trim off before you stop or start recording. So you look into the camera for a few seconds, compose your thoughts, and then you begin. And when you end a particular sequence, always leave it a few seconds before reaching forwards and turning off the camera if you haven't got remote control.